The moment they fired me, the room went silent in a way I'll never forget. Not awkward silence, reverent, almost, like everyone understood something irreversible had just happened, but no one wanted to be the first to breathe again. The carpet beneath my feet was thick, expensive, immaculate. I remember thinking how strange it was that I'd cleaned rooms worth more than my yearly salary, yet this one felt like a courtroom. She stood there too, watching. The woman who had kissed me hours earlier, who had traced my spine like it was familiar territory, now staring at me as if trying to reconcile two truths that refused to coexist. The housekeeper in uniform, the woman she had undressed with her eyes. The coat. The damn coat. Folded neatly over a chair, like evidence. I wanted to explain. God, I wanted to say everything at once. That I hadn't planned to lie, that I'd never meant to belong to her world. That for one night, just one, I'd been tired of being invisible, but the words stayed trapped behind my ribs. Heavy and useless. Some truths arrive too late to save you. Outside, Manhattan moved on. Horns blared. Laughter spilled from somewhere below. My life, apparently, was the only thing collapsing at a standstill. I felt smaller with every second, stripped not just of my job, but of the version of myself I'd briefly dared to believe in. And yet, this is the part that still surprises me. I don't regret wearing that coat, because before everything fell apart, before the truth detonated between us, she had looked at me like I mattered, like I was chosen. If you've ever loved someone you thought you weren't allowed to love, if you've ever crossed a line and paid the price, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments. Have you ever lived a love that changed everything? I was 34 years old and already fluent in the art of being overlooked. Not ignored, exactly, overlooked. Like background music in a lobby, present but never truly heard. My name is Marina Ventura, and for the past 6 years, I had worked as a housekeeper at the Beresford Hotel in Manhattan, where luxury moved quietly, and people like me learned to walk softly around it. Every morning began the same way. Dark coffee, the hiss of the subway. My son Theo tying his sneakers while asking questions too big for his age. 10 years old and already obsessed with history, politics, and why people in power were allowed to make mistakes while everyone else paid for them. I told myself I was raising him to think critically. The truth was, he saw the world too clearly for his own good, and sometimes for mine. The Beresford was my second home. I knew its rhythms, its moods, the way certain guests snapped their fingers while others avoided eye contact altogether. I cleaned their sheets, folded their clothes, erased their traces. I existed in their lives without ever being invited into them. That was the job. That was the rule. That morning, I was assigned to Suite 1712, belonging to a woman named Caroline Lane, a socialite with an entire wardrobe she never seemed to wear twice. My co-worker Steph followed me in, eyeing the room like it was a private showroom. When she pulled a camel-colored designer coat from the closet, her smile turned mischievous. "Just try it," she said. I laughed, said no, then said no again. Eventually I gave in. The coat was heavier than I expected, perfectly tailored. When I slipped it on, something subtle but unmistakable happened. My spine straightened. My reflection changed, not my face, but my presence. For a second, I didn't look like someone who cleaned rooms. I looked like someone who stayed in them. I would have taken it off immediately if my son hadn't chosen that exact moment to appear at the doorway. Theo wasn't supposed to be upstairs. On school holidays, he stayed in the staff lounge, doing homework and charming anyone who passed by. That day, he walked in beside a woman I didn't recognize. Tall, composed, effortlessly elegant. She wore confidence the way other people wore perfume, lightly, intentionally. "This is my mom," Theo said proudly. The woman's eyes met mine, and something charged the air between us. Not polite interest, not curiosity, recognition. Her gaze traveled, not disrespectfully, but deliberately, from my face to the coat, then back again. Her lips parted slightly, like she'd been caught mid-thought. "I'm Alex," she said. Her voice was low, steady, the kind that stayed with you after the words ended. I told her my name. I told her nothing else. She smiled. Not the smile people reserve for service workers, but one meant to invite conversation, to linger. I felt it immediately. The heat, the awareness. A pull low in my body that had nothing to do with the coat and everything to do with the way she looked at me, as if I were someone worth knowing. Theo launched into an enthusiastic explanation of his school project, and Alex listened like it mattered, like he mattered. When she suggested a walk in the park, my instinct was to refuse. Lines weren't meant to be crossed, roles weren't meant to blur, but when she looked back at me, questioning, open, I nodded. As we stepped into the elevator together, the doors closing softly behind us, I felt the shift. The unmistakable sense that something had already begun, and I hadn't yet decided how brave I was going to be. The park smelled like wet leaves and roasted nuts from a cart nearby. Manhattan moved around us in its usual rhythm. Joggers passing, dogs pulling at leashes, conversations overlapping like background noise. But inside the small triangle we formed, time slowed. Theo walked a few steps ahead, kicking at fallen leaves, narrating facts about presidents with the confidence of someone who had not yet learned to doubt himself. Alex listened to him like he was the most important person in the world, not politely, not indulgently, genuinely. She asked questions, followed his logic, challenged him gently. Every time she smiled at him, something tightened in my chest. I wasn't used to people giving us that kind of attention, real attention, the kind that didn't feel like charity. She walked beside me, close enough that our arms brushed now and then. Each time it happened, my body reacted before my thoughts could catch up. Heat, awareness. A quiet pull low in my stomach that had nothing to do with fantasy and everything to do with proximity. I told myself to step away. I didn't. "So," she said casually, after Theo ran ahead toward a fountain, "how long are you in the city?" There it was. The question I'd been avoiding. "Long enough," I answered carefully. She glanced at me, amused, not suspicious. "That's an elegant non-answer." I smiled despite myself. "It's a habit." Her gaze lingered on my face a second longer than necessary. I felt exposed, like she could see past the coat, past the version of me I was presenting. Instead of pulling back, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I'm glad I met you," she said. Simple words, direct, no performance. My pulse jumped. Me too. Theo came back, breathless, and Alex crouched to his level, listening again, laughing when he corrected her on a date. Watching her with him did something dangerous to me. It softened her, made her real, and made the attraction harder to dismiss as a passing thing. When the walk ended, I expected her to say goodbye politely. Instead, she hesitated. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" she asked, eyes on mine now. No ambiguity, no pretending it was about networking or coincidence. The sensible answer was no. I thought of my uniform folded in a locker upstairs, of the invisible line I was already standing on, of how easily this could unravel. "Yes," I heard myself say. Her smile widened, slow, satisfied. "Tomorrow?" I nodded. "Tomorrow." She gave Theo a quick hug before leaving, her hand warm at the small of his back. Then she turned to me. For a moment, it felt like she might touch me too. Her fingers hovered near my wrist, close enough that I felt the heat of her skin. She didn't. But the almost touch was worse than if she had. That night, I barely slept. I replayed the afternoon over and over. Her laugh, the way her eyes darkened when she focused on me, the deliberate way she stood too close without apologizing for it. I told myself I was imagining it, that powerful women didn't look twice at women like me. The next afternoon, I arrived at the cafe early. I chose a table by the window, ordered tea to keep my hands busy. When Alex walked in, the room seemed to recalibrate around her. Not because she was loud, she wasn't, but because she was certain. Her eyes found mine instantly. She wasn't wearing a suit. She was wearing jeans, a sweater, hair loose around her shoulders. More dangerous this way, more human. "Hi," she said, sitting across from me. "Hi." Conversation came easily, too easily. We talked about childhoods, favorite cities, the weight of expectations. She spoke honestly about loneliness, about how being seen didn't always mean being known. I spoke less, listening more, aware of every shift in her posture, every change in her breathing when our knees brushed under the table. At one point, she reached for my hand. Not dramatically, not to make a point, just because it was there. Her thumb traced a slow circle against my skin. I inhaled sharply before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then back to my eyes. "Is this okay?" she asked. It was the first time anyone had asked me that in years. "Yes," I said, "it is." Her hand stayed on mine, steady, warm, possessive in a quiet way that made my thoughts scatter. I knew in that moment that this wasn't just attraction. It was momentum. And once it started, I wasn't sure I had the strength to stop it. When we finally stood to leave, she leaned in, her lips close to my ear. "I've been thinking about you since yesterday," she said softly. So had I. As we stepped back onto the street, I felt it clearly now. The line had been crossed, not with a kiss. Not yet. But with intention. And intention was far harder to undo. Our meetings slipped into a quiet rhythm, almost without negotiation. Coffee became routine. Walks turned habitual. We chose places that felt neutral. Cafes with chipped mugs. Bookstores where no one cared how long you lingered. Parks where conversations could stretch without interruption. Nothing about it felt dramatic. That was what made it dangerous. Alex talked easily about the surface of her life, and carefully about what lived underneath it. She spoke of public dinners where every word was measured, of rooms filled with people who wanted something from her but never asked how she was doing. Being visible all the time, she said once, stirring her coffee absently, can be its own kind of loneliness. I listened more than I spoke. When she asked about me, I answered selectively. Theo? Yes. Motherhood? Yes. My work? Only in broad strokes. I've been in hospitality a long time, I said once, and changed the subject before she could ask more. Each omission felt small on its own. Together they formed a structure I was standing inside. The physical tension arrived quietly, like heat in a room you don't notice until it's too much. It lived in the way she leaned in when I spoke, in the way our knees brushed under cafe tables and didn't immediately pull apart, in the pauses, those seconds too long, too charged to be accidental. She never rushed me. That was the problem. One afternoon, as we walked along a tree-lined street, she reached out to steady me when I stumbled over a cracked sidewalk. Her hand wrapped around my wrist, firm, instinctive. Neither of us let go right away. The contact sent a pulse through me, sharp and unmistakable. Sorry, she said softly. It's okay, I replied. It was more than okay. At work, Steph noticed before anyone else did. She always did. She watched me one morning as I fixed my hair in the locker room, my movements slower, more deliberate. You're smiling, she said. And you only smile like that when you're not supposed to. I tried to brush it off. She didn't let me. Be careful, Marina, she warned, lowering her voice. People like you don't get second chances in places like this. Her words stayed with me longer than I wanted to admit. Alex never pressed for answers I didn't offer, but I felt her attention sharpening, studying me, not suspicious, curious. She was learning me in pieces, and I was aware of how carefully I chose which ones to give her. One evening, after a long walk that ended with the city cooling around us, we stopped near the subway entrance. The air felt thick, expectant. Alex shifted closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her body. I like this, she said quietly. Us, whatever this is. My chest tightened. Me too. She hesitated, then reached for my hand. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. Her fingers slid into mine like they'd always belonged there. My breath caught, but I didn't pull away. I didn't pretend it was casual. Her thumb brushed over my knuckles, slow and grounding. She watched my face, waiting for me to retreat. I didn't. We stood there longer than necessary, hands joined, the world moving around us. For the first time, the line between restraint and desire felt visible, thin, fragile, impossible to ignore, and I knew, with unsettling clarity, that once crossed, it wouldn't be easy to step back. Alex chose a small restaurant on the Lower East Side. Nothing polished, nothing designed to impress. Low lights, wooden tables worn smooth by time, music just loud enough to blur the edges of other conversations. It felt intentional, like she wanted a place where we could exist without being watched too closely. She was already there when I arrived, standing by the bar, jacket draped casually over one arm. When she saw me, her expression softened in a way that made my chest tighten. You look beautiful, she said. Not reflexively, not politely, like she meant it. Thank you, I replied, aware of how carefully I'd chosen my clothes. Nothing flashy, nothing that belonged to a world that wasn't mine. Still, I felt exposed under her gaze. Dinner unfolded slowly. We talked about small things at first. Books, cities we missed, places that had surprised us. Then, almost without noticing, the conversation deepened. Alex spoke about living inside expectations that never slept. About how lonely it felt to always be known by name, but rarely by truth. With you, she said quietly, I don't feel like I have to be on. I swallowed. The weight of what I wasn't saying pressed against my ribs. Maybe that's because you're not trying to impress me. Her smile was gentle. Or maybe because you see me. After dinner, we walked. No destination, just movement. The city hummed around us, neon reflecting in puddles from an earlier rain. Our arms brushed occasionally, close enough to feel intentional. Neither of us commented on it. We stopped beneath a streetlight that flickered slightly, casting uneven shadows across her face. She turned toward me fully, studying me with an intensity that made my breath slow. "I've wanted to do this all night," she said. I didn't ask what she meant. Her hand rose slowly, giving me time to step back. I didn't. Her fingers brushed my jaw, thumb resting just beneath my lower lip. When she leaned in, the kiss was unhurried. Deep, controlled, a choice, not a loss of control. Her mouth was warm, confident, lingering just long enough to make my knees weaken. I felt everything at once, the desire, the fear, the knowledge that this mattered more than it should. I kissed her back, just as deliberately, letting myself feel the full weight of it. When we pulled apart, we stayed close, foreheads nearly touching. "That," she murmured, "was exactly what I hoped it would be." I smiled, breathless. "Me too." But I stepped back. The moment stretched, fragile. She searched my face, and I could tell she wanted more, not just physically, but emotionally. I wanted it too. That was the problem. "I should go," I said softly. She nodded, disappointment flickering before she masked it. "Okay." She didn't try to convince me. She didn't make promises. She walked me to the corner, kissed my cheek once. Gentle, restrained, devastating. That night, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling. My lips still tingled. My body hummed with unsatisfied want. Guilt settled heavy in my chest, tangled with excitement I didn't know how to undo. I replayed the kiss over and over. The way she'd looked at me afterward, the way I hadn't lied with my mouth, but had with my silence. I turned onto my side, pressing my fingers lightly against my lips, as if I could still feel her there, and for the first time since this began. I wondered how long I could keep pretending this wasn't going somewhere I couldn't control. Something shifted after that night, not dramatically, not all at once. It was subtler than that, like a current changing beneath the surface while everything above still looked calm. Alex began reaching out more, messages in the morning, a call during her commute, small check-ins that carried weight because they weren't necessary, only wanted. She told me about meetings that drained her, about decisions she wished she could make without consequences rippling outward, and sometimes, carefully, almost tentatively, she spoke about the future. Not plans, she clarified once, just possibilities. The word lingered between us longer than it should have. I listened. I smiled. I deflected when the questions drifted too close to the edges of my life. I never lied outright. I just didn't correct the version of me she was building, one omission at a time. Each one felt heavier than the last. At the hotel, I felt it immediately. The way my name carried differently when it was spoken. The glances. The pauses. Steph stopped teasing me altogether. Instead, she watched me with concern she didn't bother hiding. Then one afternoon, Lionel asked me to step into a service corridor. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Lionel had been at the Beresford long enough to understand how power worked in quiet places. "You're smart," he said calmly, "which is why I'm going to give you this chance." My stomach tightened. "There are conversations happening," he continued. "Questions. You've been noticed." That can be good, or it can be very bad. I knew what he meant. I didn't pretend otherwise. "You're being considered," he said. "Management track. But nothing kills potential faster than confusion about boundaries." I nodded, my throat dry. "Whatever this is," Lionel added, "end it, or be prepared to lose more than you think you will." That night, Alex invited me to dinner again. This time, it wasn't casual. "I have an event coming up," she said over the phone. "Formal, important. I'd like you there. With me." My pulse spiked. It wasn't just a date. It was an entrance, a public alignment, a step into a world that wasn't mine and never had been. "I don't know if that's a good idea," I said carefully. "I do," she replied gently, and I wouldn't ask if it didn't matter. I ended the call and sat alone on my bed, uniform folded neatly beside me. Lionel's warning echoed in my head. So did Alex's voice. Steady, hopeful, unguarded. I knew what going meant, and I knew what saying no would cost. I closed my eyes, exhaled slowly, and made my choice. "I'll go," I texted her. And just like that, the lie didn't shrink. It grew. I took longer than usual to get ready, not because I didn't know what to wear, but because every choice felt loaded. The dress was simple, dark, nothing that screamed for attention. I wanted to look like myself, or at least the version of myself I'd been allowing Alex to see. As I zipped it up, My hands trembled slightly. I told myself it was nerves. It was more than that. It was awareness. The restaurant was elegant in a way that didn't need to announce itself. Clean lines, soft lighting, tables spaced just far enough apart to offer privacy without illusion. Alex stood when I arrived, eyes warm, unmistakably proud to have me there. The way she looked at me made my chest tighten. Dinner unfolded with a gravity that felt new. This wasn't casual. This was intention. She introduced me to a few people with ease, her hand resting lightly at my back, possessive without being performative. Each time she touched me, I felt it register everywhere. "You're okay?" she asked quietly when we finally sat. I nodded. I am, and I was. More than okay. I felt chosen. Back at the hotel, the elevator ride was silent, but charged. When the doors closed behind us, Alex turned toward me fully. She didn't rush. She searched my face, as if checking one last time that this was real. "Tell me if you want to stop," she said. I shook my head. The kiss was deeper than before, slower. Her hands framed my face, thumbs warm against my cheeks. I kissed her back with a certainty that surprised me, my body leaning into hers, memorizing the way she fit against me. In her room, the city glowed beyond the windows. She took off her jacket, then mine. The space between us dissolved without urgency. Clothes followed, piece by piece, each removal deliberate, reverent. When her hands finally explored me, tracing my waist, my hips, I exhaled, tension melting into heat. She kissed me everywhere, my neck, my collarbone, my shoulders. Each touch felt like permission. When I responded, it wasn't hesitant. It was hungry in a quiet, focused way. Skin against skin, breath against breath. The world narrowed to sensation. Heartbeat, warmth. The soft sounds we made when pleasure overtook restraint. We moved together naturally, finding rhythm without instruction. Every touch felt intentional, generous. When we finally came undone, it wasn't explosive. It was profound. A release that left me trembling, grounded, undone in the best way. After, we lay tangled in sheets that smelled faintly of soap and something sweeter. Alex traced slow patterns on my arm, her breathing steady against my shoulder. "I don't want this to be just tonight," she said softly. I closed my eyes, the weight of truth pressing close, but not yet spoken. "I know." We slept like that, close, unguarded. Morning arrived gently. Pale light slipped through the curtains, brushing her face, her hair spread across the pillow. I watched her for a moment, my chest full and tight at once. Nothing could go back to the way it was. I knew that now. I should have known the quiet wouldn't last. The morning air in the hallway felt different as I stepped out of Alex's room, cooler, sharper. I adjusted my posture automatically, the old instinct kicking in. Blend in, don't draw attention. I hadn't taken 10 steps before I felt it. The pause in movement, the weight of being seen. 2 women stood near the elevator. Guests, watching. Their eyes flicked from my face to my clothes, then back again. Recognition sparked, not of me, but of the mistake I represented. I lowered my gaze and kept walking, my pulse loud in my ears. By the time I reached the service corridor, the damage was already done. Lionel was waiting. His expression was unreadable, which somehow made it worse. "Management would like to see you," he said quietly. I didn't ask why. The room was immaculate. Glass table, neutral walls, people seated who had never learned my name. I stood in front of them in silence, my hands folded neatly in front of me, as if posture could protect me. "Marina Ventura," one of them began. "We've been made aware of a serious breach of conduct." The words landed cleanly, efficiently. They spoke of misrepresentation, of boundaries, of reputational risk. No one mentioned desire, or love, or the fact that I had never claimed to be anything I wasn't. Silence, it turned out, was enough to condemn me. "I'm afraid your employment with the Beresford is terminated effective immediately," the woman said. The door opened behind me. Alex stepped in. Her eyes went first to me, confused, searching, then to the room, to the people seated like judges. Understanding crossed her face slowly, painfully. "What is this?" she asked. No one answered her directly. They didn't have to. I felt something collapse inside my chest. Not the job. That was secondary. It was the moment she saw me fully, uniformless, exposed, no longer protected by assumption. "I didn't lie to you," I said quietly, meeting her gaze. "I just didn't correct you." Her face softened, even as shock lingered. "You should have told me." "I know." She didn't look angry. She looked hurt. For me, I wasn't used, she said firmly, turning to them. And you will not frame this as, this is not your decision, someone interrupted. I was already done listening. I gathered my things in silence, walked through the lobby for the last time with my head high and my stomach hollow. I passed the coat, folded neatly, untouched, resting on a chair as if it had never belonged to anyone at all. I didn't take it. Outside, the city roared back into focus. Traffic, voices, life continuing without pause. I stood there for a moment, empty-handed, stripped of illusion and comfort alike. And for the first time since this began, I wasn't invisible. I was fallen. The story didn't belong to me anymore. I learned that before noon. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Numbers I didn't recognize. Messages stacked on top of each other. Headlines sent by people who hadn't spoken to me in years. My name reduced to a paragraph. My face pulled from somewhere I didn't remember consenting to. The framing was efficient and cruel. Housekeeper fired after relationship with public figure. No nuance, no curiosity, just judgment. I turned the phone face down and focused on making Theo breakfast. He noticed anyway. He always did. "You're famous," he said, not smiling, eyes flicking between me and the muted television across the room. "I'm not," I replied quietly. "But they're talking about you." I nodded. "I know." School drop-off felt heavier than usual. Parents whispered. A teacher offered a sympathetic smile that made my skin crawl. I held myself together until Theo disappeared through the doors. Then I sat in the car for a long minute, breathing through the ache in my chest. My mother called that afternoon. I almost didn't answer. Almost. "Marina," she said sharply. "What were you thinking?" There it was. Not "are you okay?" Not what happened. Just disappointment dressed as concern. "You embarrassed yourself," she continued. "You embarrassed your son. You forgot your place." I closed my eyes. The words landed where they always had. Familiar, deep, old. "I didn't forget," I said. "I just stopped pretending I didn't want more." Silence. Then a scoff. "More than what you're entitled to?" I ended the call before she could say anything else. By the end of the week, I had a new job. Smaller hotel, less glamour, fewer chandeliers. The work was the same. Cleaning, folding, erasing. But the air felt different. No whispered promotions, no watching eyes. Just survival. At night, when Theo slept, the silence was loud. Alex didn't call. I told myself I understood. I told myself she had a campaign to protect. A public image to maintain. 1,000 reasons to step away. Understanding didn't make it hurt less. Then one evening, Theo asked the question that undid me. "Do people ever get forgiven?" he said, not looking at me. "When they make mistakes," I swallowed. "Sometimes. Even if they're big." "Yes," I said firmly. "Especially then." He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his homework. I sat there long after, staring at nothing, realizing something unsettling. The world had already punished me. The question now was whether I was done punishing myself too. I felt her before I saw her. That sounds dramatic, but it's the only way I can explain it. The air in the lobby shifted, subtle, unmistakable. My body reacted before my mind could catch up, my chest tightening, my breath stalling halfway in. Then I looked up. Alex stood near the entrance, surrounded by people who didn't really see her. Cameras, voices. A practiced smile she wore like armor. She looked composed, powerful, untouchable, and completely undone the moment our eyes met. The smile slipped. For a fraction of a second, the world narrowed to just us. No past, no future. Only the raw recognition of something unfinished. Theo noticed her at the same time. He froze, then moved before I could stop him. "Alex?" She turned instantly. The armor cracked. "Theo?" she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. He didn't hesitate. He never did. He walked straight to her, looking up with the same steady curiosity he'd always had. "You said people should be forgiven if they make mistakes," he said. "Do you still think that?" Alex's eyes flicked to me, shiny, unguarded. "Yes," she said. "I do." He nodded, satisfied, and did what I couldn't. He took her hand and led her toward me. We stood there, facing each other at last. No intermediaries, no misunderstandings left to hide behind. Her gaze moved over my face like she was memorizing me again, this time without illusion. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for not seeing the whole picture sooner." I shook my head. "I should have told you. I should have asked." The truth hung between us, heavy but clean. I didn't feel used, she added. Not for a second. Something in my chest loosened. I lost you, she continued, voice unsteady now. And I didn't know how to reach you without making things worse. I believed her. I'm not invisible anymore, I said. But I'm also not pretending. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Good. Because I don't want a version of you that shrinks. We didn't touch. Not yet. The restraint mattered. Can we talk? She asked. I nodded. Yes. And for the first time since everything fell apart, the future didn't feel like something I had to survive. It felt like something I could choose. We didn't talk right away. Alex suggested a walk, and I agreed. Not because I didn't have things to say, but because I needed to feel the ground beneath my feet before trusting my voice. The city was quieter than usual, the late afternoon light softening the edges of everything it touched. We walked side by side, close enough to feel each other's warmth, far enough to let the moment breathe. I don't want to rush you, she said finally, or assume anything. I nodded. I don't want to hide anymore. She stopped walking and turned toward me. Really looked at me. Not like someone studying a problem to solve, but like someone choosing. I don't care where you come from, she said. I care where you're willing to go. My throat tightened. For a long time, I said slowly, I believed love was something you survived. Something you adjusted to. I gestured between us. This feels like something you step into. Her hand reached for mine, tentative but sure. When our fingers intertwined, the contact felt earned, not stolen, not borrowed. I can't promise easy, she said. I smiled. I don't need easy. The kiss that followed wasn't desperate. It wasn't fueled by fear of loss or urgency. It was steady, certain. Her lips met mine like a decision already made, her hand resting at my waist as if it had always belonged there. When we pulled back, she rested her forehead against mine. Stay, she said again. This time it wasn't a request made in the dark. It was an invitation offered in daylight. I will, I said. And I meant it. A year later, my mornings looked different. I still woke up early, but now it was to open the doors of a small hospitality consultancy I'd built from the ground up. Not glamorous. Honest, mine. The work was demanding, fulfilling, and for the first time, aligned with who I was becoming, not who I'd been taught to be. Alex was elected that fall. We didn't pretend love made things simple. It didn't. We learned how to protect each other without hiding, how to choose privacy without shame. Some weeks were harder than others, but we showed up. Every time. Theo adored her, not because she was impressive, but because she listened. Sometimes when I catch my reflection in a window or a mirror, I think of the coat, of the woman I was when I wore it. And I smile, not because I miss her, but because I finally understand her. She wasn't pretending to be someone else. She was practicing. And this time, I didn't need borrowed clothes to belong. I just needed the courage to stay.